Hello and welcome to Dominion Rising Sun First Impressions. So this is going to be a similar format to what I believe I did for Plunder. I think it was a little bit different for Allies, but I'm going to go through the rule book and talk about the new cards, which is to say the cards that weren't shown in the previews. This is only like an hour after the rulebook dropped, which was in turn not long after we finished recording for day 5 previews. I don't remember exactly how much time, but it doesn't matter. The point is this is like very quick turnaround, which is great because you can I don't know. It's a test server is probably not exactly the right word, but there's an alternate URL for Dominion.games that you can play with the full expansion right now. So yeah, we got this earlier than expected, and I'm gonna go through it, and we're gonna talk about the cards. The images are gonna be a little low res. I've zoomed in as much on this PDF as I can, but the actual card images are still pretty small. So first one we have is Alley. We've already seen that, so I'm going to move right on to Aristocrat. 3-cost action. If the oh my gosh. I guess we found 3 or 7. Okay. Somebody was predicting that was going to be like a number of Omen or Sun tokens, but I think this is kind of similar vibes to that concept, where it's like they're both like the same distance away from like like some, well, no, that's not exactly right either. They're both the same distance away from the oh, never mind. I don't know. I was just like, it's not 0 or 5, it's 1 or 5, so it's like it doesn't quite work out to say like the 5 or the 10 spot, but anyway, okay, whatever. So if the number of aristocrats you have in play is 1 or 5 plus 3 actions, 2 or 6 plus 3 cards, 3 or 7 plus 3 coins, 4 or 8 plus 3 pies. Yeah, this is pretty wonky. So the first one you play is like it's like a crossroads that can't draw, which Crossroads is not that uncommon that you play a Crossroads that doesn't draw. Plus 3 actions with it, like as a stop card is still pretty good. Not like in the opening or anything, but it's still pretty good to get like that density of actions. It's not amazing, but like you'll definitely be able to use this as a village. Like the fact that you can play one of these, as with Crossroads, that you can play one of these and play like 2 terminal draw cards, right? You don't need to find another village after the first one, like helps offset the fact that the card itself is a stop card. Not necessarily in order to find the first draw card, but that's still playable. Then from there you get plus 3 cards. So that's really like where this is going to shine. Like if you have 2 of these, you get plus 3 cards, and then you get plus 3 actions. So the net effect, you spent 2 actions to play your 2 aristocrats. So net effect is plus 1 action, which is a village, and then you've spent 2 aristocrats to draw 3 cards. So net effect is lab. You combine village and lab, you get Lost City. Obviously it's in 2 cards, so it's like it's Lost City is like stronger by virtue of all being packaged together, so it's like easier to line up. But this is in a 3-cost card, so like that's a pretty good effect. And like plus 3 cards on a 3-cost in general is like a hard thing to find. Although I mean, obviously there's Menagerie, which doesn't even do it terminally, but otherwise it's not typical to be able to do that. Like Guard Dog can do it. but usually not. So yeah, I think that's strong. I mean, or at least it's like the if you manage to pair two of these together, it's strong. I'll put it that way. The third one being +3 coins, that's not so great. Like +3 coins on a 3 cost is like pretty good value in the sense that like it's cheap to add a 3 cost. But it's not like you're going to be able to play a bunch of these to get like cheap, efficient payload, or like you're going to be able to open this to be able to get the +3 coins. You're going to have multiple of these in play to get the 3 coins in the first place. And then how often are you going to get like a seventh one in play where you're now getting it again? But then also on top of that, like once you have like played, so you've played like your Lost City, like with the first 2 aristocrats, and then like the third one being like a terminal gold, like is not really an impressive use of the card draw and the action that you got like net out of the first 2 aristocrats. So I think this is where it's like not so exciting. And if anything, like it'd be one thing if you could open with this and then hit that +3 coins. I think then that would be a lot more exciting, because like early in the game that's doing a lot for you. But by the time you're playing with 3 of these, I don't think what you want to do with the effect of the first 2 is play a terminal gold, even though it's cheap. I think that to me that means that you're probably like not looking to play with more than 2 aristocrats unless it's just a question of being able to line things up and be able to like find those first 2 aristocrats. But I don't think you're going to get more than 2 because you're excited about playing the third one. And then the fourth one is +3 buys. So like if this is the only plus buy on the board, that's going to be really awkward. Because it's going to take a lot of work to turn that on. At this point, you've played 4 aristocrats, so the aristocrat itself is not giving you enough actions to play all of this. You need another source of plus actions to even be able to do it in the first place. And you can't get, like if you play a 5th one, now you have the plus actions, but you can't get back around to that until you've gone through this cycle. So I guess I would like early on +3 buys is not going to be as good as +3 coins, but I actually kind of think that this card would be better off if the +3 buys came first, because then if it was the plus buy, you would at least be able to like get to the plus buy just off of aristocrats and not need any support to make that work. I mean, you still kind of need support, right, in the sense that you need to be able to draw all 3 of them, play all 3 of them, but you wouldn't need any village support to be able to get your plus buy. But yeah, as it is, like it's going to be potentially pretty awkward as the only source of plus buy. And then if you just like look at, okay, now you've played, after you got your aristocrats, your first 2 aristocrats to behave like a Lost City, now your next 2 aristocrats give you a total of 3 coins and 3 buys, which is like not, that's an average of 1.5 coins and 1.5 buys per play, which is like, not much better than Herbalist. Like, so yeah, that's pretty underwhelming. So really, I think it's just all about like if you can hit those first 2 plays and get that Lost City effect. I mean, I guess if you get 6 of these somehow, then you basically you still need the village support to be able to make the whole thing work, like coming from somewhere else. But then you basically get 2 Lost City plays, and then the fact that the payload part of it isn't so good is like doesn't hurt as much. But yeah, I mean, I basically I think that yeah, like this card is, I mean, it's a weird card for sure, but I think you're really just going to care about like activating that second one, and then it's like, all right, whatever. I don't really I want more aristocrats unless I just, like I said, I need them because otherwise I can't like activate them, or because I need it for the plus buy. But like it's going to be a sad situation when you need it for the plus buy. So yeah, definitely a wonky card. I do think it's interesting how compared to like a choose card, right? Like this is obviously a lot more constrained, but what that does mean is that the choices are, well, they're not choices, but the individual outputs are more powerful than what you would get. Like if you compare this with Steward, right? Like Steward gives you 2 cards or 2 coins. I mean, the buys and the actions are different, and obviously Steward trashes. And I'm not saying this card is better than Steward. It's worse, but it's just interesting that by constraining which thing you get when, then like the individual effects can be more powerful than what it would be if you could just choose. Like if you could just choose one of these 4 effects, I don't know what this would need to cost exactly, but like probably 5, like, but obviously then it would be a lot more flexible. All right. Anyway, moving on, we have seen Artist already. We have seen Change. We have not seen Craftsman. Craftsman, 3 cost action, +2 debt, gain a card costing up to 5. So, okay. I mean, it's you pay. I mean, initially you pay 3 coins, and then you can gain a 5, and you get 2 debt as well. So you kind of paid 5 for that first 5. So that's, kind of breaks even. It's slower than gaining the 5 directly, but you might not have been able to buy the 5 directly in the first place. So that's, that's pretty good. But then, like, going forward, you can continue to gain more 5s at a cost of 2 debt each, which it does take up terminal space, so that's like the big limiting factor there, but that's still like pretty cost effective. So yeah, I think this card is pretty good. Like if you open this, like it's not going to help you hit 5, but you can get a 5, so like who cares? I mean, it does matter that, again, that it's terminal, like it's potentially competing for terminal space with your 5 that you're going to gain off of this. And, if it's like a draw thing, you could potentially draw this dead. But I don't know. Being able to gain 5s is a pretty powerful effect. And on a 3 cost, that's quite nice. You could also compare this to like Importer, where Importer isn't going to charge you any debt, but it's only going to give you the card like the next turn. So it's slower. I think, Importer, like, there's some things that can matter off the fact that you like gain the card at the start of your turn and stuff like that, but mostly, like, I think that the 2 debt is going to be like less of a penalty than the fact that your Importer will like miss the shuffle, or you need to get a second Importer to be able to play it every turn and that sort of thing. So I think this will be, Importer is not like the greatest card or anything, right? So like saying it's probably better than Importer isn't necessarily saying it's amazing, but I think it's pretty good. And I think it is probably better than Importer. I like this, like some of the stuff we're seeing with debt usage here. I think it's a clever way to like get around some of the kinds of restrictions that you would normally like run into with trying to design a card like this, where you're like, well, I can't just have a workshop that can gain fives, like, but like, well, maybe you can. So yeah, I like the, and I like how simple it is, like for being able to do that. It's elegant design. All right, Daimyo we have seen, Fishmonger we have seen, Goldmine we have seen, Imperial Envoy, 5 cost action, +5 cards, +1 buy, +2 debt. So this kind of compares to Root Cellar. Root Cellar is non-terminal, of course, but just in terms of, you get a bunch of cards, but then you take some debt, so that's gonna sort of offset like some of the value of that draw. This gives you more cards and less debt and a buy, but again, it is terminal and it's more expensive. So, it's arguably like if Root Cellar is similar to Warehouse, then this is kind of like a terminal sifter, which is not something we see too much of. Young Witch is an example, but it's definitely like, even if you're just drawing coppers, it is still net draw. If you draw like 5 coppers with this, then it earns you 3 cards on net effectively, and it comes with a buy. So like that compares unfavorably to like Barge or Margrave, but that's not like a big problem because those are both really good cards. And sometimes this will be better than that, not necessarily in the sense of being better than Barge or Margrave, but in the sense of like the effective draw is greater because you're not just drawing coppers, like you have better cards than that in your deck. And so like paying off the 2 debt isn't going to be as difficult as as it would have been like earlier in the game or what have you. So it is, roughly speaking, a Smithy variant. I think as a 5-cost Smithy, I think as 5-cost Smithies go, it's going to be at least pretty good. Like sometimes it's going to be absolutely bonkers, right? If you have like particularly dense payload, like you imagine that like your average payload is like a gold or a loot or something. Well, this is like, it's not quite just +5 cards, but it's pretty close. Like that's pretty crazy. Yeah, so yeah, I think this, like I said, a Smithy variants go, I think it should be pretty good. I think it will still like not be as good as say Barge, because I think that the flexibility of Barge is definitely relevant and will come into play like more consistently than like you're gonna have like such good payload. The 2 debt is like feels inconsequential, but I could still see it swinging the other direction. I could see this being like outperforming Barge often enough that you would say that it's better. It really, of course, is going to depend on, like I said, how impactful that debt is. But I guess one question is how much better or worse is a card that says like that has no debt and just says +4 cards, +1 buy? Like, how does that compare to Barge? I think it's actually not clear that it's better. Like obviously drawing more cards is better, but like the duration effect of Barge is a pretty big deal. But like I said, if you're comparing with Barge, you're already in a pretty good spot as a terminal draw card. So yeah, I think this should be good. Yeah. And again, I like that this, like, we can have these like simple designs as a consequence of how the cards interact with that. I think that's like it's especially nice given how complex some of the other stuff in the set is. All right, moving right along, we have Kitsune, which we have already seen, and then we have Litter. Okay, +2 cards, +1, or sorry, +2 cards, +2 actions, +1 debt. 5 cost action. So this is Lost City, but you take a debt instead of giving your opponent a card. Interesting, because like abstractly, it seems like this should be worse than Lost City, because giving your opponent a card one time should be not as bad as having to take a debt every time you play this. But the thing is with Lost City that like you sometimes it can feel like there's no right time to add a Lost City. And this card isn't going to have that problem, right? Like, one debt is little enough that you're not really going to be concerned about, like, oh, can I really afford to add this to my deck? Like, so long as what you want is cards and actions, and you can afford to put it in your deck, like, then you're going to put it into your deck, which is not, I guess, that's not the case with Lost City, right? Sometimes you prefer other draw cards, you prefer other sources of plus actions because you don't want to give your opponent like the tempo boost. On the other hand, I mean, the thing that I said initially I think is still valid, that this is like it accumulates as a bigger penalty than the penalty on Lost City. I guess overall I still do think Lost City is the better card. But I think they're comparable enough that we can say like Litter should be a good card. It doesn't take much for this to like pay for itself. Like it's even if it's drawing, if it draws a copper, right, it's essentially a bizarre, I guess. Is that right? You pay the copper and then you've gotten. No, I guess that's not right. Is it if it draws a copper? I guess it's essentially just a village. So that's not great, but you can do better than that. I mean, it's still better than a village at that point, because like drawing through the copper has value even if like you didn't get like net coins from it. So that's probably not the right way to think about it either. I don't know why I'm having a harder time thinking about it here than I was with like Root Cellar. But yeah, maybe the better comparison would be, I mean, I guess it's kind of like you draw two, you get to your two actions, you draw two, you discard one. So like a kind of a combination of like Village and Fugitive or something like that. Which isn't really a card that we have, so then maybe that's why I'm I'm struggling with that a little bit. But anyway, yeah, I mean, maybe this is speaking to the fact that I'm underestimating Root Cellar. Although the difference is like Root Cellar is 3 cards in 3 debt, and this is like 2 cards in 1 debt. So like it is easier for this card to like go positive than for Root Cellar to go positive. Of course, it is also more expensive, but then it's also giving you a village effect, so it's giving you a value that isn't just tied to the draw. But in any case, yeah, I do think Lost City should be better, but I think this is at least competitive with Lost City, and therefore should be reasonably good. All right, and yeah, I mean, I guess I don't need to repeat myself about the debt and the design, but we've actually got quite a few cards like that. We've seen Mountain Shrine Ninja, Poet, and Rice Broker, the card that had no business being guessed during the guessing game. So another 5 cost action, +1 action. Trash a card from your hand if it's a treasure, +2 cards. If it's an action, +5 cards. Okay, so kind of an apprentice variant. If you can open this, it's basically like opening a Spice Merchant. It's less flexible than Spice Merchant, but but it can trash estates non-terminally, even though you don't get any like value from it. But it can't take the coins and buy, which mostly is fine. Obviously, having to pay 5 for opening Spice Merchant is not like necessarily what you want, but you would do it often enough. The trashing the action for 5 cards, it's like a super zombie apprentice. That's potentially quite strong. It can be, tricky on some boards to find like or to have stuff that you actively want to trash, but usually there is something. Like usually there's a way to make that work. And where a zombie apprentice only nets 1 card, like you play the necromancer, you trash the card, you're down 2 cards, and then you draw 3, so you're up 1. This is going to net 3 cards. So that this is like, you need to feed it, and which is definitely like a significant like consideration and drawback. But it is, it is like a triple lab, or however you want to put it, activated menagerie plus lab, whatever, in terms of the net draw, and that's a lot of cards. Obviously comparable to apprentice trashing another 5 cost. So it doesn't doesn't combine nearly as well with like a gold gain or something like that, the way that apprentice would. So I think in that respect, it's possibly worse than apprentice. The big advantage that it has over apprentice is it can draw off the copper trashing. Like, it can't draw off the estate trashing, which is a notable downside compared to apprentice, but it can draw off the copper trashing, and you do have more coppers in your deck to start the game with than you do estates. Not being able to trash gold for big draw is a pretty significant downside. You also can't do things like trash province and draw a million cards. So yeah, I mean, I'm leaning towards apprentice is better, because trashing actions is often the card type that you least would want to trash, and that's where you're getting the most value here. But the being able to cycle coppers is a pretty big deal, and makes this card like definitely more appealing early, especially if you have a way to thin another way to thin estates. Like apprentice. I mean, apprentice, obviously, like, you can get that early and like thin your estates, but then you can end up in like a stretch where it's like, do I even play this apprentice to trash a copper? Do I just want to like use the money? Like, I don't know. Like, it feels pretty bad. Like, this is going to have that problem with estates, but that's like less bad if it does happen, because you're not sacrificing any econ that turn to trash the estate. And then if you obviously like trashing coppers, you get to cycle. So yeah, I think it should be pretty good. Like, again, comparable to apprentice, probably worse than apprentice overall, but maybe better in the earlier parts of the game. And like, sometimes this is going to be your draw, and it's potentially going to be quite strong when it is. Like, if you got a cheap way to gain vagrants or whatever, like, kind of thing like that, then you draw a lot of cards. All right, next we have River Shrine, which we have seen, River Boat, which we've also seen, and then we have Ronin. 5 cost action shadow. Draw until you have 7 cards in hand. You can play this from your deck as if in your hand. Okay, so first impression, this does not seem very good. The general advantage of being a shadow card is twofold. One is that you can play it anytime. Like, well, not literally anytime, but like you have a lot of control over when you can play it. Obviously that applies to this. Well, the other is that it effectively has +1 card on it because it sort of because the fact that you're not playing out of your hand means you don't have to take a card out of your hand like to play it. So it's effectively +1 card, but Ronin doesn't get value from that. Seems like a big downside. Like, of all of the things that you could have as a shadow card, draw to X seems like a very strange choice to me. I mean, I guess the idea is like, okay, we're gonna make you work for this, but like this doesn't have any upside compared to other draw to X card, like, you know, so like library can filter out other action cards if you're playing it terminally, which is definitely not the most exciting upside, but it's still like something that it can do. Scholar, you can discard your hand, so well, you have to discard your hand, but like the point is, like, if your hand is, you know, full of crud, you can just chuck it using Scholar. But this card doesn't do either of those things. So it's a 5 cost, draw to 7. I don't know. I mean, it does have the advantage that, like, you're gonna find it. So, like, if you have draw to X synergy anyway, then the fact that this is like sitting there ready for you is definitely very nice. Like, you can empty out your hand, and then you can play your Ronin off the bottom of your deck and go. But I don't know. Like, I guess I think, you know, yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, how much better is that going to be in practice than, you know, like library or scholar or something would be in the same context? Maybe it is better enough when that comes up. Like, I guess I could see it, because a lot of times one of the things with draw to X cards is you don't want very many of them, because the number of times that you can empty your hand and then draw back up with them is pretty limited. Like, even if you have a lot of synergistic cards, you know, a lot of festivals, a lot of hamlets, a lot of, I don't know, whatever, you know, discard synergy, or, you know, like disappearing, or like, you know, non-drawing actions, that sort of thing. You know, you can spend a lot more of those, like, compared to how many draw cards you have, and so you can get in this awkward balance where it's like, well, I need to make sure I find one of my draw to X cards, but that's hard to do because I don't want to take too many of them, because then they're just like dead weight in the deck. But then if I don't take enough of them, I don't find them. And Ronin definitely does get around that problem. So maybe that's enough to make it like better, because on the cases where you don't have the right stuff to activate the draw to X, you just leave it on the bottom of your deck, and it doesn't, like, you know, the fact that you would only draw, you know, 2 cards instead of 3 because you already had, like, you're not taking a card out of your hand doesn't really matter, because you just not play it. The other thing, I guess, is that if you do end up putting this card into your hand because you didn't play it through your shuffle, it's not going to be bothered by the fact that by the loss of the +1 card. So you can just, like, wait for it. Although if you get multiple of these and they're all sitting on the bottom of your deck, then that doesn't work out necessarily so well. But yeah, I still think, like, this is not going to be a great card. Like, a lot of that is just because draw to X in general is not like a strong deck paradigm. It's fun. I love it when I can get draw to X to work, and I think a lot of other people feel the same. But it doesn't tend to be, like, very good. And this has, like, by itself has, like, no other features to, like, help make that work, just in terms of, like, emptying out your hand. But yeah, I mean, I could at least see it being, like, I could at least see the sort of reliability that it offers being better than like library or scholar, which is not saying a lot. But yeah. All right. Next up, we have Root Cellar, which we have seen. Rustic Village, we have seen. Samurai. and it is an attack, which is not a surprise. 6 cost action duration attack. Each other player discards down to 3 cards in hand once. Once? Oh. At the start of each of your turns this game, +1 coin. This stays in play. Oh. So, permanent +1 coin is like, it's okay, right? Like, we've seen that effect with Endless Chalice. It's not terribly exciting. I'd rather have my militia back. Especially for 6. Like, how often would I want to buy a 6 cost action, eternal action, to be able to get like a permanent +1 coin? I don't think very often. Like, mostly, like, I want to be able to use this to attack, but then I only get to attack once. I don't know. I mean, this feels like a money card. Like, having the +1 coin in a money deck would be pretty impactful. You could also compare it to like permanently having the key, except for the interaction with your opponent part. But it just feels like in a money deck you might take this over gold. You get to attack, you get to get your permanent coin. But like I don't know. It is a lot to pay for a militia effect. If like that's the primary thing that you care about. You're paying 6 coins for a one-time militia effect. That's like pretty, like, it's just pretty expensive. And then you got to buy another one if you want to do it again. There's like sort of some similarity there to Cutthroat, because Cutthroat, like, you have to get the Cutthroat back in some way, and that usually involves adding another stop card to your deck, because your opponent can gain the treasure and help you get your Cutthroat back, but even then you're going to get a loot. So I guess it would be more accurate to say it usually involves adding multiple stop cards to your deck. But yeah, I think, but even then, like, you don't necessarily need to like spend like the same kind of gain to like get your Cutthroat back, right? Like, if you have something that like gains a treasure, an expensive enough treasure, you can get it back without necessarily, like, that's like generally going to be easier to do than gaining a 6 cost action. Like, you have a gold gainer, you have something that can gain 5s, something that can generically gain treasures like pirate or hero. Gaining 6 cost actions is generally pretty difficult to do without buying them. So this is going to be like more restricted in that sense. It's not going to be adding the stop cards to your deck like on net, like, because you took one out to play the samurai, and then if you get another one, like, you're just even. But yeah, I guess the nice thing is, like, once you have you have one samurai, you play it, now you get 1 coin, and it's cheaper to get the next one. But and I could certainly see it being relevant as like a thing where you're trying, you need to slow your opponent down. They're playing the money deck, and you're like, I need more time, so I need to keep attacking, so you have to keep gaining these samurai. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is on the weaker side. Like, it just it's interesting. I guess you could compare this to Hireling and say, well, I guess +1 coin is worse than +1 card, which, yeah, it is. And that's why it has, like, on play, it has the attack. But Hireling's not that strong anyway. It can be, but it on in general is just like kind of like expensive and slow for what it does. And I think that's just going to be the problem with Samurai as well. So yeah, I guess I don't like I'm talking about this like I wish it was different, but it's not like I think the design is bad. I'm like from a strength perspective, I'm like I get I feeling I'm gonna be a little disappointed in this card. I'm gonna want more out of it than what it's gonna be offering. But it is an interesting design, right? Like to like how much do you value that one time attack? Like that is an interesting question to be asking yourself. All right. Next up we have Snake Witch. 2-cost action attack. +1 card, +1 action. If your hand has no duplicate cards, you may reveal it and return this to its pile to have each other player gain a curse. Okay. So another kind of like one-shot attack in a different way. I will say in general that like this idea of having these kind of one-shot attacks is neat because, like a lot of people don't like attacks, or like, if attacks are too strong, they find them oppressive or what have you. And so this is like a way to keep attacks as a relevant part of the game without like just kind of having more of the same in terms of like you're really like powerful attacks, but you can still like a strong engine can probably afford to keep gaining these snake witches back like if it needs to, but that's not going to be like trivial to do, and so like the extra work that you have to do is going to help like make that feel more manageable, I imagine. In any case, so in terms of actually activating this, it's going to be a little tricky. Like the fact that it draws a card means that when you choose to play this, it's going to be hard to know for sure that you won't have duplicate cards in your hand. You almost wish that it didn't draw a card, or even better, that it had the first text, like the bottom part of the first, and then it did the +1 card, +1 action. But yeah, as it is, yeah, it's going to be unreliable for the most part, even in the best of circumstances. I mean, there will be obviously situations where you know what's on top of your deck, or you don't have any copies of the cards that are already in your hand or whatever, and that's all good, but that's not going to come up that often. But yeah, early in the game, this isn't going to go off because you're going to have too many coppers, so it's going to take a while before this comes online. So that's another thing, is like like having cursing that starts like later into the game is another like design thing that I think some like recent cards have tried to push. Like the most obvious example of this would be Sorcerer and Sorceress, but there's some other things along those lines as well, I think. Like Siren, kind of the like Coven in a way. Anyway, but yeah, this is going in that direction as well, which I think is also good. And yeah, I mean, it's cheap enough that it's realistic to like keep doing it. An interesting thing about this is that if there's no curse trashing, like it's going to get like pretty quickly difficult to actually continue to activate Snake Witches. Like once each player has given out like a couple of curses, like it's going to get more and more likely that the curses block you from activating your own Snake Witch. But yeah, so like how actually strong is this? Probably not that strong. But like it's not like, I don't think it's like super weak or anything, but the limitation of needing no duplicates and the limitation of needing to return it, to me, make it seem like it's going to be like uh, as cursors go, like on the weaker side. The nice thing is that like even if it doesn't give out a curse, it's not like hurting anything to have it in your deck. It's not the kind of thing where you feel like, oh, like dang, I wish I hadn't bothered with this because, it's like it's only a 2 cost. So like the marginal cost of adding it is obviously like very low. It's not, or like the opportunity cost, not the marginal cost. The opportunity cost is generally going to be pretty low. And like if it doesn't work out, then whatever, maybe it'll work out next time. It's like it didn't get in the way. And it like, like you still got it in your deck, so you can just try again next time. So it'll be like a relatively easy pickup. Something to maybe watch out for with this is that, like, if you get a bunch of them and none of them have gone off, then they're potentially going to block each other. Although, they can't block like the last one or even the second to last one, so that's probably fine. But it is something to keep in mind. Like if you're thinking about like, oh, I'm going to add a bunch of snake witches and then give out a bunch of curses, like, well, maybe not, because like there's a good chance that like each additional snake witch you have is going to make it harder to, like, it is going to be harder to activate. Yeah, so moving on, we've got Tanuki, 5 cost action, shadow. So I think this is our final shadow card. Trash a card from your hand, gain a card costing up to 2 more than it. You can play this from your deck as if in your hand. So this is just straight up a remodel that is a shadow. So it can't really miss a state, which is nice. Although it's not going to be easy to open with, so how valuable that is kind of hampered by that. Other than that, like, I mean, on a board with relatively poor deck control, it is going to be very nice to be able to hit your specific targets and do things like turn golds into provinces and mill provinces and whatever, like, and make sure that you have the thing that you want available to target. But I do think that the value of having this particular effect be a shadow is relatively low compared to some of the other things. Like if it were something that you could open with and you could like, oh, I can guarantee that I can pair it with an estate on turn 3 or turn 4, like then that would be like a different story. But because you can't, and you're like, well, I mean, obviously sometimes you can, but like most of the time you can't, so you're not going to get it until like a little bit later anyway, and then it's potentially competing with other terminals that you've already added, or maybe you've already picked up an estate trasher or something. I think like it's not clear to me that this is really any better than remodel, because like just that cost difference is going to be relevant, and the shadow effect of this, I mean, it is nice that it doesn't reduce your hand size as much as remodel does. That's always going to be like a relevant consideration with these shadow cards, well, except Ronin, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I feel like, when remodel effects are powerful, or at their most powerful, is often when you have like good deck control anyway. And when you have good deck control anyway, like lining up your remodel with its targets is not really like the thing that you're necessarily worried about so much. Like the important thing is to like have your deck control like kick off, and then like you draw cards and you get actions, and then it's like, okay, now I have like the stuff in hand to do the payloady things. But like not needing to draw the payloady thing is like nice, but I think it's less impactful than having like the deck control like stuff readily available, or like and unlike, again, unlike, Ninja or Fishmonger or Alley, like the fact that you're generally not going to be able to open with this like reduces the impact of like the part of the early game where obviously you don't have deck control, and then you can like make sure that you get it with the right timing. So I think, yeah, as the shadow cards go, I think this is less impressive. I think that it's yeah, probably not really any better than Remodel. Maybe a bit better, but I don't know. I think being able to open Remodel makes a pretty big difference. I think I also agree with people who've said they'd like to see shadow cards come back in future expansions. This feels like we have not explored this design space particularly thoroughly with only 5 of them, and like there's a lot of other things that shadow cards could do. I mean, I do wonder like about the theming around it, because like with events, for example, and durations, events and durations being like 2 of the biggest like mechanics that like started in a specific expansion but then got brought back in the future. They're sort of themeless base, like at a baseline level, right? Like duration is just like a card that stays out. Event is just like a thing that you can buy that doesn't go into your deck. Like they're not really tied conceptually to a particular like theme or expansion. Shadow cards feel a little bit different from that perspective. Like, I don't know, maybe it doesn't really matter and you can just have more shadow cards in the future and who cares. But I do wonder like if that's going to be a consideration at all. Because, here you have like Ninja, which is like, it's kind of obvious like that makes sense as a shadow card. And admittedly, like some of the other ones don't obviously make sense. Like Fishmonger, like why is the Fishmonger shadow card? I don't really know. But the relationship between, okay, we have this, Japanese themed expansion, and then so of course you're going to have a ninja, and then you have a shadow card, and well, of course that makes sense. Like that all kind of fits together. I don't know how much it matters, like if that like sort of coherence doesn't hold up in future sets, or whether that affects whether or not we see more shadow cards in the future. I guess I hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't matter. But like, I guess I'm thinking about like what would shadow cards have been called if they had debuted in a different expansion? Would they still have been called shadow cards? Like, I don't know. Like, I think durations and events, it wouldn't matter what expansion they debuted in. You'd call them the same thing, probably. Or if you didn't, you'd call them something, kind of equally generic. But shadow cards feel like maybe they would have a different name if they were in a different expansion, and maybe that makes it harder to just bring them back. But maybe not. We'll see. And I would certainly like to see more shadow cards in the future. All right. Next up, we have Tea House. This is another Omen card. I believe this is our 6th Omen, which should make it the last Omen. So this is 5-cost Omen. So this is the second 5-cost Omen, which means like we were talking, originally when we saw the initial set of Omens about how prophecies were going to be triggered, like what timing the prophecies were going to be triggered, and it sort of was built around this assumption that we were going to open with these Omen cards. But now that we've seen 2 5-costs, I think should put a little bit of a damper on those expectations about the timing of the prophecies. But anyway, so +1 Sun token, +1 card, +1 action, +2 coins. So this is just activated conspirator, which is for 5. It's pretty solid. I mean, it's going to depend a lot on the +buy situation. Like, obviously, if you compare this to Grand Market, if you have some buys, then like it's basically just as good as Grand Market, except it's a lot cheaper. But if you don't have the buys, then like that can make a substantial difference about how much you care about just getting like sort of to like this double peddler effect. The like, and obviously another thing about Grand Market is like, because you're getting the buys every time, like if you have a big Grand Market stack, then that gives you a lot of pile control. So it's more, there's more value there than just the fact that it's like, you know, building up your money in a way that doesn't involve stop cards, blah blah blah. But still, I mean, I think this should be, even again putting aside the Omen, which I still have to do at this point. I think this should be pretty good. Like if you have a 5/2, this is definitely not going to be like the most exciting card to open because it's not really going to help your deck control or anything. But it's not bad. Like, you know, having like, you know, if you wanted to like spike like a 6 or a 7, like this would be pretty effective at doing that. You know, of course, usually you're not going to have a 5/2, but you know, and as like something to pick up, like as not your first 5, but as maybe like your third or fourth 5, like so long as there's some plus buy. If there's not plus buy, like it's like it still can potentially be good. But it like you're not gonna want very many of them before it's like, well, I like additional ones of these aren't really doing anything. I guess you could also compare this to Baker, where obviously this makes more money than Baker, but like on a board without plus buy, Baker has the advantage that obviously you can stockpile the tokens for smoothing and you're not, you know, like losing value there. If there is plus buy though, like you'd probably be spending them like about as fast as they're coming in anyway, and so now like the extra coin, you know, is really nice. Yeah, but overall, you know, it's a solid card, potentially very good on some boards. I mean, you know, sometimes it's easy to activate conspirators, and obviously conspirator is cheaper, and even then, like, it's usually not like absolutely amazing. But then again, part of the reason is that you can have these like conspirator duds, and obviously that's not going to be like a concern with Tea House. So yeah, something along the lines of like good but not great, I think, or good but not amazing seems about right. Anyway, I think this is it for the cards. I think we're going to be moving on to landscapes, but I need some... Yep, we're moving on to landscapes. All right, but I need some water, so I will be right back. All right, I am back. And...
I am back.
Yeah, I have
surprise.
Surprise. I brought somebody with me. Or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that she has brought herself.
I have brought myself. Jumped on the opportunity to join in.
Yeah, so
now that it seems less daunting.
So we're going to talk about some landscapes.
Whee!
And it looks like we're going to start with the prophecies.
All right.
Starting with approaching army.
Oh my god, more ships. I can't. Okay, I'm not here to talk about the art because it's too pixelated.
Yeah, it's quite pixelated, unfortunately.
Approaching army. After you play an attack card plus 1 coin, set up, add an attack kingdom card pile to the supply. Add!
Yeah.
Whoa! So we can have 13 pile kingdoms now. That's amazing.
In a sense. I mean, the ferryman pile doesn't really count.
No. I was thinking Young Witch and a looter, but Young Witch would be... Oh, or
it
would it?
It does not say add an attack kingdom card pile to the supply if there isn't one already. It just says add an attack.
So, here we go.
So, yes.
13 pile kingdom on the horizon.
Yeah.
Like an approaching army.
Ferryman, too.
But it's not like.
But it's still, there'll still be another thing. Like if you in IRL, like if you're like looking at the number of piles like sitting there on the table.
Yeah.
If you're trying to maximize the amount of table space that Dominion occupies, you want to include ferryman.
Do you think Donald X just tries to cover all the available space.
I think so. I think it's thematic, right? It's like representing colonialism.
Yes.
I mean, the game's called Dominion after all.
It's true. So it is very thematic, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Approaching army. What do you think of the approaching army? I feel like if it... Sorry. I'm like, what do you think? Here's what I think. Okay, no, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. It's fine. You go first.
I don't know. I feel like it's nice. Like, it's fine. It's not like as table flippy as like many of the other prophecies that we've seen. Yeah, I think I'm more like, the effect that gets me more is like this: just add like an 11th pile to the kingdom.
Yeah, I mean, I think guaranteeing that there's an attack feels pretty impactful. I agree that the actual prophecy effect is not nearly as crazy as some of the other ones we've seen. Maybe as any of the other ones we've seen. I'd have to go back and look through them, but I mean, obviously it still does push playing those attack cards, because, you know, getting an extra coin when you're playing them, like, you know, that's an improvement.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of attack cards where that isn't like going to be enough to move the needle to like where you would play it if you wouldn't otherwise, I think. Like it, I mean, it does depend. Like, so if like Urchin is in the kingdom, then like now Urchin is a peddler, like, okay, yeah, I want a bunch of Urchins, and I wouldn't normally just want a bunch of Urchins. It's just like if there was like a token you could put on the pile, right? And I mean, essentially that's what that is. It's like the pile is like the attacks are trained or teacher token or whatever. But like, you know, if you have like, you know, a witch or something like that, like you need terminal space for it, right? And like adding +1 coin to it isn't gonna like super duper change like how many witches you want in your deck, just because like the effect it has on your deck control is still relevant. I mean, obviously there are times when it would affect it, like, oh, I have Academy, I have Champion or whatever, like, here, sure, let me just like take all the witches that I can. But, you know, like most of the time you're still gonna be like primarily focused on like, well, this takes up terminal space that I, you know, like I can only afford so much of that. It will be nice with cards that are like otherwise like already intended to like generate econs, like Swamp Hag or Frigate or something like that. Like you're already what primarily is maybe not the right word for it, because obviously a big point of it is the attack, but it's, you know, it's still like it's like a core part to what the card does, and you're kind of already building around that aspect of the card, so now it's just like getting better at that. Another big thing is like treasure attacks. That's just like all upside. Like Cauldron gets really like really nice, like 5 cost for like non-terminal like gold with plus buy on it, basically 5 cost loot, that like can also give out curses. Sword, it's just like now it makes 4 coins.
Idol relic. Turns those into golds.
So yeah, I mean, I still, with Idol and Relic, I still feel like you're not necessarily going to play with a ton of them with those unless you have plus buy or like good, like particularly good draw, or like a convenient like way to gain the treasures. But obviously it's still an improvement. So yeah, but yeah, I agree with you. Not the most impactful prophecy as a prophecy. The setup though, like, yeah, that's I mean, more piles means more Dominion, so
means more fun.
Yeah.
Means more good stuff.
Right, which means we should do what your friend does and play with all the piles.
Yay.
Well, you know, we wouldn't want to remove all the variety that Dominion has to offer, so we should probably randomly pick one kingdom card pile not to include in a game of Dominion, and then we have all the other ones.
We fixed it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Next up is biding time. At the start of your cleanup, set aside your hand face down. At the start of your next turn, put those cards into your hand.
What? Set aside your hand face down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not... Okay.
Yeah, so this is like...
It's like prepare, but not like... But different.
Right.
So it's like prepare without the playing of the cards.
Right. So, the most simple thing that this does is it makes all of your green cards miss the shuffle forever.
Yeah, and ever.
They just stay in your hand. It's like you kind of like you exiled them, unless like you have to discard them for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Or you're attacked. You're like Haunted Woods attacked or something.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's like the simplest case, but like you can also use this as like a mega turn prep thing, right? Where you just like slowly build up, or quickly, depending, a bunch of stuff in your hand. I mean, unlike some of the other like mega turn enablers of this nature, like it's not going to give you any additional terminal space to work with. So like it's not like, oh, I just saved up until I had like 5 bridges in my hand. If you don't have any villages, that's not going to do you any good. But on the other hand, you don't need draw, right? Like you could like, if you save up bridges and villages, then you don't like need to draw to get to your villages and your bridges. You just have them already and you just play them. I mean, that could be pretty slow. So like, I don't know how effective that would necessarily be, but yeah, I think like the base case of like just making stop cards, you know, skip like stay in your hand, like skip shuffles, etc., is already powerful. But then like some of the like the flexible stuff you can do. I mean, like yeah, like you said, unlike prepare, it's not actually going to play the card. So you know, as I said, it's not going to give you extra terminal space, but it does still mean you can carry over. It's like super save, right? Where you can carry over
everything.
Like, you know, you're like, oh, I had terminal collision. Like, well, whatever. I'll just, you know, carry this card over. Oh, I don't need to play this copper. I don't need that extra coin. I'll just carry that over till next turn. Like it's like very, very, very flexible.
Yeah, you don't have to worry so much about drawing stuff dead.
Yeah. I mean, you could basically use this as draw, like, essentially. Especially if you have, like, so, like, you could compare this to, like, something like Silos, right? Or Grotto, where you, out of the box, it isn't going to give you this effect. But if you have, like, discard stuff, even if it's, like, negative, like, hand size discard, like, if you save a bunch of green cards or a bunch of coppers or whatever, and then you play a warehouse, like, yeah, the warehouse didn't increase your hand size, but like the fact that your hand size was already increased means that it's like going to be easier to like get your good cards into hand and like line stuff up than it would be if you were just playing a warehouse by itself.
Yeah. Imagine this with Crossroads. At some point you activate the prophecy. Like it's not activated from the beginning, but like once it's activated and you still have green cards, or you add your green cards. It's
yes. Really neat. So Crossroads is a great call. Like Church Crossroads is already a thing, right? You set aside 3 green cards, you're like, or 2 green cards in Crossroads. You're like, wow, this is so good. Or well, I mean, with a single church, like you might get, you know, multiple churches per turn or something. With this, like you don't. I mean, you just set aside all the green cards and a Crossroads. Yeah. And like, woo!
Yeah, without even having to do anything because it's a prophecy.
Right. It's just automatically. Free. Yep. It's just free. Yeah. I mean, it is important to note that it's not going to be active right away. So like. Because if it were, it would be completely like bonkers crazy how it affected the opening.
Yeah.
But still, like this is definitely a very powerful effect, and it's going to be like very crunchy. Like you're gonna constantly be like every single card that you think about playing, you have to want like. Should I actually play this now? Or should I bide my time and hold on to it and play it later? It'll get a lot easier if there's a discard attack. Then it'll be a lot easier to decide just play the cards. But like if there's not, like you really don't want to just go on autopilot with this in the kingdom.
Yeah. Yeah, fun. Sounds really fun.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Next up, we have Bureaucracy.
Uh-oh.
Oh boy.
When you gain a card that doesn't cost 0 coins, gain a copper.
Oh.
Punished. That, I will say, I love this thematically.
Yeah.
I think this is brilliant. As someone who has worked in public administration, how do you say this in English? I draw my hat to you. Like
tip.
I tip my hat to you. This is very apt.
Yeah.
Very aptly named.
Yeah.
Okay.
This of course will always make me think of the best of the Leonard Nimoy read quotes from, I think it was Civilization 4, which is, the bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy.
Okay, let's talk about cards that cost 0 coins. We have Peddler, we have Destrier.
Potentially, yeah. Ruins. Copper. Curse.
Yeah.
Cost reduction.
Cost reduction, yes. Okay. And this doesn't come online
rewards.
True. So you have like 7 to 8 turns, as we said, probably.
Or more with the 5 cost omens.
Yeah. But like at least 7 or 8 turns until this is going to affect you.
Mm-hmm.
Which means there is a reasonable chance that like peddlers will be activated by that point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you said copper, but it's like, you get the copper, right? You don't.
Yeah.
It's like
it's probably better to buy another card and get a copper than to buy a copper. Yes. Now, curse, on the other hand, I mean, that's just value. No copper comes with that. Get them curses.
I mean, maybe there's Defile Shrine or something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, so this is going to be a really hard thing to dodge, right? Like, yeah, okay, Peddler, fine. But, like, you're not going to play the whole game gaining Peddlers and nothing else. Like,
yes.
So, absent cost reduction, yeah, you're going to be dealing with this. You know, you hope you have good trashing. You hope you have, like, some kind of thing that likes trashing copper, right? You got your moneylender loves the bureaucracy.
It feels a little bit like Shaman to me, or it's like akin to Shaman.
Yeah,
where like you try to trash, but like it comes back.
Yeah. There is there's definitely some similarity there. But yeah, your moneylender is gonna be happy. Your spice merchant, is gonna be happy. That counterfeit and
like these things,
yeah. So that's obviously something to look out for. But yeah, ultimately, I mean, it's going to be kind of like Wall too, in the sense that you're going to have to be very judicious about your gains, right? You're not just going to, or Swamp Hag, where you need to be, just need to make sure that every card that you gain is like really worth gaining, given that it's coming with a copper. Because you can very quickly swamp yourself with coppers. Like it's not like, I guess the Swamp Hag, comparison probably makes more sense, because it's not like, except that the pile isn't going to run. Although it could. I mean, if there's something that's going to make the copper pile run like on a board that isn't like Beggar or Galleria, I don't know.
Deliver. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe. Well, Deliver, you still need all the other there's not the Deliver. That's the
yeah.
But anyway, I don't know. Maybe this will. I mean, surely this will make it more likely for copper to pile than Beggars, because like you're not very likely to play with Beggar. But like, yeah, maybe in fact, I could see this being the single thing in all of Dominion that like makes it most likely that copper piles.
Oh, I haven't even registered this. Not just like in your entire buy phase, but it's per card.
Yes.
Per card that doesn't cost.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So like you have to be very judicious, like I said, about like what you're gaining. Make sure that it's worth it. Because like you can be
Holy moly.
swimming in copper very quickly. So
this is like, you want to have this when there's priest on the board. You can just happily trash away. Or like, I mean, what we said with like counterfeit and everything that like lets you, that benefits that. But holy moly, okay.
Yeah.
I hadn't even grasped the full extent of this.
Yeah. So we talked about, negative prophecies. This is obviously another one. Like, this is not, like, even under the most optimistic circumstances, it's hard to see that this is ever going to be like actively good for your deck.
Yeah.
Like, I guess the exception I can think of would be Tower. But then the thing is, like, once you've gained a whole bunch of copper, then it's going to be hard to gain more because you're just going to draw hands of copper.
Yeah, gardens.
yeah, gardens. Okay, yeah, gardens. That's a good call.
Gardens.
Fountain, like, you don't need a billion coppers for Fountain, but like you can trash all of your coppers. No worries, you'll be able to get them back.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
Yep, it's
Yeah.
It's a prophecy.
Yeah. Very, very interesting.
For sure.
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, sounds really fun.
All right. Next up, Divine Wind, which we have seen is absolutely bananas. Enlightenment, which we have seen, also bananas.
And
Flourishing
bad art. And good art.
Flourishing Trade, which we have seen, also pretty bananas. Good Harvest.
The first time you play each differently named treasure each turn first, +1 buy and +1 coin.
Whoa.
The first time you play each differently named treasure each turn first, +1 buy and +1 coin. Does that mean like first in the sense of before, like if you play the hammer, then first you get the plus buy and the plus coin, and then you choose your forecast card? Or what does the first
Yes,
mean?
it does mean that.
Okay.
I don't really know why that ordering would particularly matter, but maybe there's some situation in which it would. So this turns your first copper into, like,
into spices,
which is like, so don't trash your last copper because that's pretty good.
True.
Your silver becomes a loot. Your gold becomes a super loot. Your loot becomes super loot. This big loot buff, because like how many duplicate loots are you gonna have? Probably not many, if any.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they basically become rice.
Doubloons value. Suddenly doubloons is like the best loot.
Donald X was like, everyone's hating on doubloons.
Oh man, if you really hope that this is active when you play your... Oh no, wait, it doesn't do that. Oh, Endless Chalice, sad.
Yeah.
Because it only gives you the extra buy and coin the first time.
Yeah.
Oh no.
But it's fine. Like, this is cool.
Well, I mean, it makes Endless Chalice worse relative to every other loot. Like, it's an Endless Chalice nerf for sure.
We have to stop the Endless Chalice hate.
But this is kind of like...
Okay.
Definitely makes Endless Chalice worse.
Fine.
But yeah, I mean, we talked earlier about, like the attack, the +1 coin when you play attacks. We mentioned like some attack treasures. Obviously, this is just like, it's that, but it's all the treasures. I mean, except only the first copy, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. It's again like kind of accelerating the game and just boosting your payload in the buy phase. Well, not only.
No.
Like through the whole storyteller, black market.
Yep.
Specialist. Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
Also, like your first crown.
Ooh.
We'll give you this.
Beautiful.
Coronet.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Spell scroll gives plus buy now. Amazing.
Finally. We have been waiting. And coins. We have been waiting so long.
If you spell scroll into a gold, right? Now that's like better than if you had just gotten
it's a platinum.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah, exactly. Also, platinum gives you 6 coins in a buy. The first one.
The first one, yes.
Right. Spell scroll doesn't have this problem because, like, of course it's the first one. Like, what? How many spell scrolls are you gonna play in one turn? Like, maybe you play a second one. Okay, yes, with treasure
spell scroll.
With treasure, that's different. Yeah. But treasure spell scroll doesn't really care that it doesn't get to take advantage of this effect.
I mean, it will take advantage of this effect.
Well, a little bit, just not really. I mean, it's not the interaction between spell scroll and treasure doesn't get to take advantage of the effect because it will already have gone off by the time like you're doing all that nonsense. Like you've already played a spell scroll.
Yeah, and then you play a treasurer, and then you gain a spell scroll, and then you play the spell scroll. It activates.
No, it doesn't activate it. You've already played a spell scroll. It doesn't say like the first time, or like the first, like if you don't have any other copies in play or whatever. Okay. It's just the first time.
Okay.
So
yeah. Okay, you're right.
If it was no other copies in play, then yeah, that would be silly.
But maybe that's exactly why it's named, like, phrased that way.
Maybe. I think it's more likely to be like stockpile. Like you don't get 4 coins and 2 buys for every stockpile you play. Which doesn't require like a second card in the kingdom to be true. But yeah. Fortunately this also doesn't apply in the opening, so like stockpile isn't just like completely stupid.
Yeah.
Which it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, by the time this activates, depending on like which omen is activating it, like it's possible that stockpiles are basically not like relevant anymore. Not particularly likely that that's the case, but it's possible. But yeah, so it's definitely like pushing, like a money thing, right? Like if you play just like a money deck and you have like you have your 7 starting coppers, you have like some silver, you have some gold, like in any given turn, right, you're reasonably likely to have at least 2 of the 3 of copper, silver, gold, and now like you get an extra 2 coins off that, so you only really need to hit 6 coins in hand, right, which is a lot less than 8.
Well, it definitely, yes, and it definitely enables, like, it helps the money deck because it gives you the plus buy, right, which you wouldn't normally have.
That's also
depending
true.
on the treasures available, but
yeah, that's also true. Yeah. So, but I mean, even if the plus buy isn't actively relevant, like if you have like a hand of like 2 coppers, 2 silvers, and an estate or something can hit province, which is like pretty crazy. Or a hand of like gold and 3 coppers, whatever, like gold's obviously like gold, silver, copper would more than hit province.
Yeah.
Your classic gold and 2 silvers hits province.
Yeah.
That where normally you would be crying. Like so yeah.
Yeah, pretty powerful. I mean, all under the caveat that you have to activate the prophecy, but
right.
Yes.
Well, it's more like if your opponent, in that case, it's more likely that your opponent would have activated it for you, but at least now you get to like take advantage of it, right? Yeah. Like if anything, I don't know, like, if somebody's playing, if you're playing more of a, engine-y deck against somebody who's playing more of a money deck, like you might want to not activate this because like it's going to help them immediately, and it might help you too, but like the difference in their deck's capability like is probably going to be larger as a consequence of this than your deck as like the player who's building, unless there's a bunch of good kingdom treasures or something that you're taking advantage of that they're not, or I don't know, something along those lines. But yeah, and like I said, big loot buff, like you get like variety for this. Horn of Plenty gets a coin and a buy too, which is like that, I mean, it's not like a huge difference maker, but it's just like treasures that where you're not even thinking, like Cage. We don't even think about like it being something that generates money. Like,
yeah, true.
Trying to think like what else, like Crucible, like obviously generates money, but like you know, not if it trashes copper or something like that. What tools? Yeah, yeah. So there's some kind of wacky stuff with this, like just in terms of like your expectations about how things behave.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Fun
Indeed. All right. Great leader we have seen. Growth we have seen. Harsh winter.
Beautiful art.
Yeah. Well, or so we assume. So when you gain a card in your turn, if there's debt on its pile, take it. Otherwise, put 2 debt on its pile. Oh, dang. Okay, so this is like the tax prophecy. It's like, aha, I get to, you know, I'm get the first crack at this, and then I'm gonna put debt on it. This definitely has like a big first mover advantage. Like, I mean, obviously, like the first person to take a card out of the pile, like, okay, you get to put the debt on it, and then it's harder for your opponent to take it. But like also, like if you're the one who activates the prophecy, like that means that you're going to get the first crack at whatever card that you most want to get, and then like have the debt on.
Yes.
So that's not that, I mean, most of the prophecies probably have first mover advantages. Bureaucrat would be a big exception. Or bureaucracy, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this one, it's just like very like clear. Yeah. So, and as actually, I would describe this as another negative one, even though it's not straightforwardly negative, because obviously, like if you're the one that gets to take the first card, like, you put the debt on there, like that's positive for you, but it's like an attacky prophecy.
Yeah. And it's also swingy, right? You never know what your opponent will be able to buy or not, so you put the debt on it thinking, well, so now they have to take the debt, but what if they don't? And then like you might be locked out from, well, not locked out, but it might not make sense for you to gain another copy of that card.
So the I mean that definitely happens with tax. There is an important distinction here, though, which is
this can't pile.
It cannot pile up, but it has like a parity thing where like if you put the debt on the pile and then I take the card and then you take another copy, you get to put debt on the pile again. But like if we keep ping-ponging like that, I never get to put debt on it, so I just have to keep eating the debt.
True.
Another interesting thing about this is this can put debt in some weird places. So, okay, let's suppose that you play a sleigh after you do this. Gain a horse, you put 2 debt on the horse pile, and then you gain another horse and you take 2 debt.
Is that
pile.
What it's yeah?
It doesn't say it has to be like a kingdom pile or a supply pile, it just says it has to be a pile. So things that are piles include not only horses, but apparently loot.
And black market?
Black market is a deck.
Okay.
Yeah, black market is a deck, so it doesn't apply to black market, but
loot,
it does.
Spirits.
It does apply to loot. Spirits, madmen.
Travelers?
No.
Because you don't gain them, you exchange them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think rewards might technically be a pile, even though like it's a weird one because it doesn't like the order doesn't matter and all that, but like I think they're technically a pile.
Yeah, the horses can get tricky. Like if you play livery or something.
Yeah, this is a fairly big nerf to horse gainers.
Yeah.
In general, I mean, not always. Like sometimes you only gain 1 horse at a time or something, but like a lot of the horse gainers gain multiple horses. So like cavalry, paddock, sleigh, livery. Sometimes
it's also I just like. With like gainers in general, like groom, ironworks, inventor, you can just like spam tax, like spam debt if you want to. or like remodels and stuff.
You're just saying like keep getting different cards from different piles and then like put the debt on all of them.
War chest.
Experiment
Sunken
also
treasure.
now costs 5 kind of.
Port. Yeah.
Because port now kind of costs 6 because you get you get the first one and then you put the debt on it and you get the second one and you take the debt. So it's like,
yeah, potentially really, really funny.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to think like what is the weirdest. So, well, Madman in theory.
Madman is also exchange. Yeah.
Madman is exchange, so the only way to get the debt onto the Madman pile would be something like trash it and then gain it with Lurker.
Lurker.
Yeah, Lurker gets around this in the sense that even if the debt is on the pile, you can trash.
Yeah, you can gain it.
Oh no, wait, no, because you still gain the card. It doesn't matter if you gain it from the pile or not. It just matters if you gain it. So like if you
but it doesn't matter to you because it's just like
no, but like okay, so let's say that there's forget Madman. Let's say that like there's
I mean, like it doesn't get around the debt, but it gets around you having to take the debt.
No, it doesn't. That's what I'm saying.
Why?
When you gain a card on your turn, if there is debt on its pile, take it, otherwise put debt on its pile. So if there's debt on its pile, it doesn't matter if you gained it from the pile. It just matters if you gained it. So like even if you gain it from the trash, you still have to take the debt.
Okay. So same with transport is not affected by.
Transport isn't because you're not gaining the card.
Yeah. Okay.
But like even like if you somehow, I don't know, let's say
and like camel train, all that stuff.
Camel train,
Invest. Okay.
But let's say that like for whatever reason you like there's debt on the castle's pile and small castle is in the trash. You gain small castle from the trash. There's the pile has debt. So even though small castle isn't even the castle that's on top of the pile, you still have to take the debt. Amazing.
Yeah, that's a good tweak.
So this is well, it's harsh.
It is. Would you say it's like a harsh winter?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, no, I like this. I think it's interesting. I mean, I could see it being annoying from, like I said, like the first mover advantage perspective, but it's like, yeah, I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, totally.
The auto tax. It also does push variety, like both like within a deck and across players, which is often a nice thing to push.
How does this work with blockade?
Well, if I blockade a card,
because you don't gain it, right? On the turn when you play the block.
You do.
Oh, okay.
But if I blockade a card that didn't have debt on it, then now if you want a copy, you're going to take a curse and 2 debt. So
harsh.
Pretty harsh, yeah.
Okay.
But it also means that it's harder to do the like blockade lockout, right? Where like I blockade a card and now if you take it, it has like comes with a curse and 2 debt. But then the next turn, if I blockade the same card, now I take the debt, and you can take it without the debt, although you still have to take the curse.
Yeah.
But like the blockade, like it's at least more difficult for me to just like keep gaining that same card over and over because I'm gonna keep taking. Well, I'm gonna take that every other time I do it. So cool.
Yeah.
All right. Kind Emperor and Panic, we have seen progress.
When you gain a card, put it onto your deck.
Whether you want to or not.
Whether you want to or not. So, like, all the victory cards go onto your deck.
Yes.
But also, like, during your turn, yeah. So everything that hasn't been an onto your deck gainer is now an onto your deck gainer.
Everything wants to be replaced into Armory.
And Artificer.
Yeah.
How does that...
Artisan.
Yeah. How
does... Well, not exactly.
Well, no, Artisan is now a double top decker. Artisan is
yeah.
maybe worse now.
This is definitely a nerf for Artisan in particular. Definitely.
Yeah. I wonder how that, like, for your action phase, this seems pretty good, but like for your buy, like if you have to green, this seems difficult.
Yeah, no, I actually think, I don't know. Sometimes in your action phase it's going to be good, sometimes it's going to be bad. Sometimes in your buy phase it's going to be good, sometimes it's going to be bad.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to think, given the timing of when this is going to come online, that I'm leaning that it's net negative on average,
Mm-hmm.
because you're already going to have gained like a lot of your components potentially, or at least a decent number of them. Like the tempo value of top decking your deck control buys or whatever, is some of that is going, the opportunity for some of that is going to be lost. And even if you get into the greening phase and you're still gaining components as well, and you're like, well, I'm top decking like, you know, a province and a village, or a province and a draw card, like that isn't necessarily like a net positive. That can sometimes be break even or even net negative.
Yes. I feel like, oh, you weren't done.
Well, and it was just sometimes you gain payload, right? And like what I need, I'm gonna gain a province and a payload card so I can threaten double province, but I don't want the payload card on top of my deck either.
Yeah. I find this interesting. Like, it's interesting that this is named progress, because like I do see why that would be, because like if you like during your turn and you gain cards that, like, it enables the gain and play. I see the progress aspect there. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I feel like this is one card where I feel like the theme of this expansion so far for me has been like accelerate, 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 and this to me feels like not like it's not the opposite, but it definitely like slows you down more, and kind of it definitely like favors the mega turn strategy, because
Agreed.
then it doesn't matter that like you just top decked 5 victory cards, right? Because like there will not be another turn.
Although even the mega turn strategy, like you're gaining your Horn of Plenty and then you're top decking your Horn of Plenty, like
that's true.
You gain your bridge,
yeah,
and you top deck your bridge, and like what?
Yeah, no, you're right.
But I'm not just really disagreeing with you. I mean, I still think that overall that's preferable than like top decking a province.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, that's I mean, I might be underestimating how much of the game is going to be left when you're still top decking draw cards and villages and whatnot, and obviously that's going to be beneficial. And it really where that balance is going to determine like whether this is overall like an accelerant or a decelerant, I guess. But yeah, it's like it's definitely not like just a straightforward power boost. Like that much is clear.
Yeah.
And it's gonna definitely like change your decision-making process about your buy phase, or your, you know, gainers during your action phase. But like, you know, you're gonna have to be careful that you're not just like insta-dutting yourself like with your gains.
Yeah, totally. And like imagine this with castles, imagine this with lurker hunting grounds or something. Like it's just gonna block.
With lurker hunting grounds, this might not ever come online.
That's
true. But castles,
sure.
Like castles.
Or not lurker hunting grounds, but like hunting grounds, and like you need to trash hunting grounds for some reasons, and then you just like
or just like every time you take wild hunt points, you have to top deck an estate. Like, or every time you triumph, you're like, I'm gonna double triumph, I'm gonna triple triumph, and now I have a bunch of estates on the top of my deck.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, you still might do it, is the thing, like because like
points are points.
Yeah, you gotta get them points.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think it'll be a cool like thing to play with.
Yeah, I feel it's kind of like Wall in that way, where it just forces you to be like very economic.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy these landscapes a lot that just like turn a thing upside down and force you to to go about it, to find a good way around it. I do think that's cool.
Yeah. There will presumably be some ways around this. I'm trying to think. So it's when you gain a card, put it onto your deck. I'm trying to think, is that the same time? Armory, for instance, says gain a card costing up to 4 onto your deck. So it goes directly onto your deck. It it does not visit your discard pile. I'm not sure. I think that would be I think with this one it would visit your discard pile. I'm trying to think, like, how often are you going to be able to get around this? Like, like Falconer is not going to be able to gain to your hand. Sculptor is not going to be able to gain to your hand. But are there any cases where, like, if you, like, replace is going to top deck the green card because replace normally just says top deck it or otherwise don't, but it doesn't like say like specifically put it in your discard pile or whatever. Like, what other cases are there? Does this help you get around the siren restriction? I mean, it probably doesn't matter because you want siren earlier in the game, then this would like be in effect anyway. But I think it it does get around the siren restriction.
True.
But what other like interactions are there that would allow you, like slay? If you discard a slay, like this goes into your discard pile and then you react with slay, discard slay, and put it in your hand, that will get around this. I'm pretty sure.
Yep. Sorry, say that again.
So if you react, like slay has the reaction that says like, you may, when you gain a card, you may discard this to top deck it or put it into your hand.
Okay.
So you gain the card, you react with slay it's in your discard pile, you react with slay first, you discard slay, you put it in your hand. Now it's in your hand, it's not on top of your deck.
Oh, okay.
And stop moving says it can't go onto your deck. So slay will let you get around this. Watchtower, if you want to trash it, I guess, but I mean, it doesn't come up too often that you gain something just to trash it, but it does come up. I don't know. There's probably other things.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to think. Like, Trail could help you draw some of your useless cards that you didn't actually want to top deck. Herald does nothing. Or like it does everything that Herald did for you. And how does it work with in doesn't matter.
In the in effect, I think the in effect is when you gain this. Yeah, like you could choose to resolve the in effect first or not. You would shuffle if you wanted to make sure the in was on top of your deck. You would choose not to put the in into your deck, and then you would shuffle in other actions. You'd shuffle your deck, and then the in would get top decked.
Yeah.
If you didn't want the in specifically on top of your deck, like you couldn't avoid putting the in into your deck at all, but you could choose to shuffle the in, and then it won't specifically be on top of your deck. It'll just be somewhere in there. Yeah. Oof. All right. I guess we can move on. To Rapid Expansion, which we've already seen, and Sickness, which we've already seen, and Amass, which we've already seen, and Aestheticism.
Beautiful art, as far as I can tell. Pay any amount of coins to trash that many cards from your hand, and it costs 2. Okay, so it's 2 plus X, and then you can trash X cards from your hand. Interesting. This is kind of like Infirmary.
Kinda, yeah.
Interesting.
Although it doesn't have Infirmary has like the draw, right? Yes. that it does that this doesn't have. So it's going to be
which
harder.
Makes it difficult on like in the open, I would say.
You can still trash an estate on your either your 3 or your 4 hand. But that's generally going to be it.
Yeah. But it's nice, like, not on your like opening turns, but then maybe turn 3, maybe turn 4, maybe turn like it can potentially be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, if you just see like silver, 2 copper, 2 estate, you can buy this and trash both of your estates.
Yeah,
which is
very nice.
Compares favorably to trade. I mean, depending on whether you want the silvers or not. It's I mean, in trashing 1 estate in the opening, we already talked about this with, what was the one that wasn't enhance?
Yeah. They all blur together in my mind.
Yeah, but the one where it's like, oh, it's Kintsugi. Yeah, with Kintsugi, like there's a similar thing in Scrounge. So the all 3 of these are ways that you can trash like 1 or 2 estates in the opening, depending on how valuable that is. And like, so opening with like a 4 and trashing an estate, that sort of thing, is an option. But yeah, I mean, just amassing a bunch of money and then trashing a bunch of cards, like, definitely seems like, yeah, like you say, comparable to Infirmary kind of thing you want to do, or Banish,
or like Peaceful
Cult, Cemetery.
Yeah.
Well, Peaceful Cult is
Importer Peaceful Cult.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think this will push opening with like a like a draw card or something like that, where you can increase your hand size and have some money that you can use to trash other cards. Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is like crazy strong, but I think it's pretty strong. I think it's comparable to to something like Banish, in that it's like a multi-card trasher, but you've got to do some work to get like a lot of value out of that multi-card thing, just because of the cost of like actually doing it. Although Banish has the restriction that they have to all be of the same type, and this does not, which is definitely
a plus.
Yeah, definitely a nice benefit.
Yep.
So yeah, I think this should be pretty good.
Sounds good.
Next up, we have Continue, which we have seen, so we will continue. Credit, we have seen. Foresight.
Ooh.
2-cost event. Reveal cards from your deck until revealing an action. Set it aside and discard the rest. Put it into your hand at end of turn. Okay.
Sorry, I'm distracted by the art.
The giant eye.
I shouldn't be, because I can't see it very well, but it seems very distracting.
It's like there's a bridge, but then like the bridge is also the eyelid or something.
Yeah, I don't. Oh, it's a little distressing. Okay, sorry. Reveal cards from your deck until revealing an action. Set it aside and discard the rest. Put it into your hand at end of turn. Okay.
So this is like, vaguely similar to Scouting Party or Pursue or Ghost. I think, also Save, because it's basically like +1 card next turn.
Or Delay.
Well, Delay gives you the village effect that this doesn't give, because it's just putting it into your hand.
That's true.
This will, of course, be vulnerable to discard attacks, as Save is. This, you can use this, you can buy this a bunch. So in theory, we were talking about biding time and Megaturn stuff. In theory, you can do that with this. It's going to be a lot harder, but you could do it. But yeah, I think mostly this is going to be a combination of you have a bunch of crap top deck, so you just buy this to just get rid of some of it. How much of it is going to depend on where that action card is, but you can just cycle through some junk cards. And then the bonus is that you also kind of get +1 card the next turn. And
so
then
you wanna combine this with Progress, basically.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of dud insurance of well,
Yeah.
I know I have like good cards coming up, so let me like make sure that I get to them. And the nice thing is that like because it's going to stop on the first action, like unlike like Pursue and sort of unlike Scouting Party, like if you know that you have like a bunch of junk but you also have like a village and a smithy and whatever, like you don't have to worry that you're like, oops, I discarded the villages trying to find the smithies, oops, I discarded the smithies trying to find the villages. Like you're gonna stop on the first one. I mean, sometimes that's not going to be ideal because sometimes it's like the top card was the village, I didn't discard any of the junk, like but at least you don't have to worry about like if I have multiple different things that I care about. Like, you know, Scouting Party has the thing where it's like if I have like a bunch of good cards, I can end up having to discard some of them. Pursue has the thing where it's like I'm going to pursue one type of card, I can end up discarding other good cards. This isn't really going to have that problem. Like it's pretty hard to be in a situation where you are buying this and then you're discarding cards that you didn't want to discard because like what are those cards? Like
yeah. It's a little bit, it makes me think of March. I know that it's different, but it kind of like in terms of speeding up travelers or something.
Yeah, unfortunately, because it's in your buy phase, like there's no way to like exchange a traveler and then like Foresight the traveler, but there's some stuff kind of like that you could do, right? Like you could open like with Masquerade, you know, Bounty Hunter, Priest, whatever, and then just like buy Foresight and like guarantee that you essentially top deck that opening buy if that's what you care about. And also, you know, you get +1 card, so you're going to have if it's not, I mean, with Masquerade it's a little bit different, but like if it's, you know, it's a card like Bounty Hunter or Priest or something, you're guaranteed you have a clean shuffle as well because you only have 11 card deck and you're drawing an extra card, so you're gonna have 6 cards and then 5 cards. So yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah, I mean, overall, I think another thing you can do with this is like if you have, like I mentioned, buying it multiple times. So like, I mean, if you have the money and, you know, that's not necessarily trivial, but like if it's like, well, I have, you know, I want to get rid of a whole bunch of cards. Oh, I stopped on an action card. I didn't get rid of that many junk cards. Just buy it again. Then you can just get rid of, you know, some more junk cards or maybe all the junk cards if you only have the one action or, you know, what have you. Yeah, so I think this is pretty solid. I don't think it's amazing, but I think it's pretty solid and will be like another one of those nice like tactical events that really gives you an opportunity to like kind of fine tune your deck and like your shuffles and that sort of thing.
Yep, and disturbing art.
Yeah, I will be interested to see that at higher resolution exactly what's going on there. I wonder if what's going on actually is that like this is supposed to be, it's like there is just an eye that's sort of like blurred into like whatever the eye is seeing or something like that. So it's like you're getting like seeing part of the vision, something like that.
Yeah. Let's see.
All right, so we've seen gather,
Kintsugi,
and practice.
Receive tribute. 5 cost event. What?
I was just like, it's the return of tribute, maybe.
5 cost event. If you've gained at least 3 cards this turn, gain up to 3 differently named action cards you don't have copies of in play.
Wow.
Okay. What was tribute again?
Nothing to really do with this at all.
Okay, good. Then let's not get into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so how hard is this going to be? So this has kind of like pilgrimage flavors with the
it's
with
like
the difference of like obviously the threshold is higher. You have to have already gained cards in order for this to activate. And then also you don't have to, like, it's up to 3 cards, so you have a little more leniency there. Oh, but you don't have copies of in play.
Yeah, it's reverse pilgrimage.
That's
basically.
Right. Ooh.
Like, pilgrimage is like spend time not gaining cards to gain cards that you already have. This is like gain some cards to gain more cards that you don't have. It's like reverse pilgrimage.
That's interesting.
Or sunken treasure.
I was thinking, like, this might be good on voyage turns, just because, like, you can't really...
But how are you going to gain 3 cards on a voyage turn?
Exactly, yeah. So it's not great on voyage turns.
No, but it like, it could be, like...
I mean, okay, so a quote-unquote simple way to activate this is, like, if you have, like, livery or whatever in play, or supplies that, like, lets you gain cards and then it's automatically activated. If you don't have gainers or experiments ports whatsoever, right? Are you excited?
Sorry.
It's okay. If you have to gain these 3 cards in your buy phase before you can receive the tribute, that's not gonna be a thing that you can do early.
No. So, I mean, it's not really gonna be a thing you can do early.
True.
Period.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah.
There. I'm sure there will be exceptions, but in general, like.
And so then I feel like this limitation of firstly you can only gain action cards. Secondly, only action cards that you don't have copies of in play. I don't actually know how good this is.
I don't think it's good.
Yeah.
When it is good, it'll be like pretty great, but I think it'll be really hard to use. Like, because being able to gain 3 cards before you even buy this, like, without already having copies in play of, like, the good cards that you want to gain with this seems hard. I mean, it is worth noting that, like, you don't need to gain 3 different action cards that you don't already have copies of in play in order to get value out of this, right? Like, just being able to gain, like, a King's Court would still be worthwhile, or, like, a City Quarter. But like, again, it's just, like, okay, but you there's a board with King's Court and you gain 3 cards in a turn without having King's Court like already in your deck. Like, okay, like, how? What? So I think this is it feels extremely narrow to me.
I think where I can see this working well is with Divine Wind.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. It's like, you don't have any of these cards in your deck, so how are you gonna have copies of them in play?
Yeah.
Black market would also be an example where it's like you play a bunch of cards from the black market, you gain some cards from the black market, and then you buy this and you gain the kingdom cards. Yeah, I mean, and then there are cases, like you said, where the first part of the activation isn't going to be difficult. So, like, it's more like, oh, you play your supplies and you get your horses, and then you're like, okay, well, I want even just like, like 1 6-cost card, or like a 4 and a 3 or something. And it's like, yeah, this is still like value at that point, even if it's not like amazing value. It's still like, it's still good.
And this can get you grand markets, right? Even if you have shoppers in play, stuff like that.
Yeah, it can do that. Yeah, like, I mean, just buying a grand market with this would be worth doing.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, you have a grand market board and you gained like 3 cards that turn, and you didn't have a grand market in play. Like, how'd you do that? Like, I mean, sometimes you will be able to, like, don't get me wrong, but like, it's just, I don't know, like, a lot of times the ability to gain 3 cards in a turn indicates that your deck has already reached a certain level of power, and like, that's hard to do if you don't have the powerful cards that you want to gain with this.
Yeah. Would we feel differently about this if it weren't action cards?
maybe not super different, I don't think, but maybe somewhat, yeah. Using it to just gain a bunch of treasures, yeah, I don't know.
Platinum.
Yeah.
Rice. Bank.
Right.
Night cards.
Night cards is interesting. Or night cards.
Or night cards always got a bad rep.
Yeah. And it doesn't even, like, Colony. Vampire doesn't even help because the gain from vampire comes after.
I mean, it can't be not anything specific. Well, it could be like a non-victory card.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you could gain to colony off of this, that
would be silly.
Pretty silly.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I think this is on, as events go, this is on the weaker side. Like, again, it's like when it's good, it has the potential to be very good. I just don't think it's going to be good very often. Like, I think it's going to be like there's going to be a lot of games where you just like never get to take advantage of this because it just doesn't really do anything.
Yep.
But most importantly, it will be on the quiz. I mean, all of them will be on the quiz if the quiz means the all card-shaped objects quiz.
But you mean the name.
But if I mean, yes, the name substring quiz, it will be on the quiz.
Amazing.
Yes.
So we all win.
We all win.
It's a win for everyone.
For everyone.
For the Dominion card memorization.
That's right.
All right.
And the Dominion cards substring identification community.
I think there's overlap.
There is.
I think one contains the other.
Possibly.
All right. I'm gonna cry.
Speaking of more boats.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a pretty unique looking boat, and it's a card that goes into the quiz as well.
It's true. I feel like maybe we've already reached the point where this could be its own card quiz. Just the boat, ships, whatever are in Dominion cards quiz. We've had 3 more this expansion. Anywho, I'm fine. Sea Trade, a 4-cost event. +1 card per action card you have in play. Trash up to that many cards from your hand.
Okay.
Explain, please.
Well, this is also kind of infirmary-esque, right? That's why it's drawing, is because it's like, okay, you probably need to draw some cards that you have enough stuff in your hand to trash after you've played.
But like, you can also open this and trash, like if on the 4/3 and trash your estates.
No.
Oh,
because you don't get any, you don't have any action card unless you have Necropolis. But then if you have Necropolis, you play Necropolis and 4 coppers, and you don't get to. Well, no, you can draw a card and trash it. Yeah, you can draw a card and trash it. Okay. That doesn't. I think that's unlikely to be what you want to do. To like maybe trash a copper. Most likely trash a copper. I mean, 60% to trash copper, 40% to trash something else. But like as an opening, I don't know about that. But yeah, I think this is like more of one of those like you build up a little bit and then you try to do a big trash with this. So like, like cemetery. I mean, infirmary you kind of do both, but like big infirmary, banish, like, those kinds of things. The one that we just talked about like 10 minutes ago or whenever it was. That neither of us can remember the name of at this point because it's just been far too long. I'm gonna find out. Aestheticism.
Yes.
Incredible. Yeah, so anyway, so the like I guess the thing here is like it doesn't matter what the actions are, so you can just like throw like random cantrips into your deck or whatever to get your big trash off, which on the one hand it's kind of nice, but on the other hand, like if you haven't trashed yet, it's going to be potentially hard to like actually get those all into play so that you can like do your big trash. So.
Do you think this is gonna counteract like if you have witches and then it's kind of like a second donate at some point where like you can just not worry if you have like a function, like your deck functions well enough that like you don't have to care about the curses anymore. You can just like throw in a random C trade at some point.
Coven, anti-coven technology. Yeah, maybe. I could definitely see it. See that happening, like you said, kind of like second donate. Yeah. Especially like what's especially nice with this and with respect to Coven in particular is like a lot of times what happens with Coven is like you're like, okay, I don't want to trigger shuffle that just top decks a bunch of estates. I'm sorry, estates. Top decks a bunch of curses, right? So like avoid triggering the shuffle, and now the curses are kind of distributed throughout the deck, and you kind of have to trash them one at a time. It's hard to like line stuff up. This is like, nah, it's fine. Just like you're gonna draw like. If you were drawing a deck before, like surely you're gonna draw at least like 5 cards off of this. So you just like draw all the curses, and then boom, which is
and they're gone.
Why you just don't play with Coven on when C trade's on the board, maybe like depending on what the rest of the kingdom looks like. But yeah, you know, on a weak board, this isn't gonna help it not be weak because you're not gonna have that many actions in play, and it's not gonna do enough trashing to like really move the needle. Like if you're like, oh, I found my terminal, let me buy C trade and trash 1 card, like maybe not. Unless it's just like there's nothing good to buy it for. But
which happens sometimes.
It
but
does.
Not
it does.
often.
It does. Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I think on a board where you know if you can just it's all there's It reminds me a little bit of like trying to pop your lamp. I mean, obviously it doesn't have like the uniques thing, but it's like you just kind of throw actions into your deck like early and try to like, you know, it's like look, at some point I'll line up like village smithy or whatever it is that's gonna like get you increased hand size and a decent amount of money, and then if and when that happens, like then now bang, like you trash a whole bunch of cards and now your deck is looking like really nice. But that could be pretty high variance because without the trashing coming in, you're like kind of at the mercy of your shuffles. And as such, I think it's most likely going to be the case that you're going to want to use like regular trashing when it's available as opposed to like waiting on this, because it's going to be like kind of low tempo to play to this without like any kind of other trashing. But then like if you have something like a good estate trasher but it doesn't trash copper, like then I think that like starts to look pretty nice because you know you can like thin out somewhat as you're building up. It's gonna be easier to line stuff up, and then you do your big copper trash, or like, you know, same thing if it's the other way around, right? You get your copper trasher, you get value out of that, and then at some point you just like zap your estates with C trade. Kind of a supplementary trasher that way, potentially.
Yeah.
Okay. That might be the end. I think that might be the end. Yep, we are out of the cards and onto the recommended sets. So yep, that is all of the cards and landscapes in Rising Sun. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this is all now available to play on Dominion.games. You do have to go to a special URL for at least this weekend. I don't remember what it is. It's in the Discord.
It's now available?
Yes, it is currently available.
Oh my god. I have to go.
Yeah. Exactly. Time to go play with some Rising Sun cards. Yeah.
Amazing. Do you have any like overall impressions?
I think prophecies look amazing. I would need to take another look through the omens to see what I think about those as a whole, but certainly at least some of them were good enough that I expect the prophecies to come into play like fairly aggressively. Shadow cards, honestly, I'm as a whole a little underwhelmed with what we got from that mechanic relative to how much potential there is there, which is why I kind of do agree with the take that we should see those come back, because there's a lot more to be done there. I mean, I think Ninja is like really good and like really like a prime example of like, wow, this can do a lot. I think Fishmonger is very interesting as a shadow card, but like Tanuki, I'm like, that's okay, you know, it's fine. I don't know. Maybe I'll think it's more exciting later, but I like the debt, like the on-play debt stuff. I think that's like a cool design space, and I think if you I actually wonder if you would like, if like Souk or Poorhouse were in this set, whether you would use debt for those, like rather than minus coins, because then like you can't get around it, so to speak. Although maybe being able to get around it is the point, so maybe not. But like, you know, it'd just be interesting to see like how that played. But yeah, so like I think I like how there's like a bunch of really complex stuff in this set, but there's also a bunch of like really simple stuff that is just like gets to take advantage of the return of debt in order to be simple. Yeah.
I agree, or I feel like maybe I feel like the prophecies they seem so cool, and I don't know if like I needed this additional, I don't know if that I needed like 2 new mechanics necessarily, or maybe the prophecies would have been enough and maybe shadows could have gone to another expansion. But I see like I listened to you do like the first part of this, and like what you said about Ninja, how like or the fact that those are called shadow cards and not like duration or events, that kind of ties it to this expansion. And so I see how maybe once the decision was made to do this like Asian themed or like Japan themed expansion, you don't want to miss like the opportunity to have the ninja and everything. But I feel like, yeah, maybe, I mean, it's still potential there, right? We can hold out hope that this is not the end of shadow cards. But yeah, I agree that not having played it at all, maybe the shadow cards aren't like all that we hoped that they would be, or we wished that they would be.
Yeah. I actually like that take. The idea of like maybe the shadow card should have been in another expansion. I actually like that take a lot. I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it depends. Like if the shadow cards come back, then it doesn't matter so much.
Yeah.
But if they don't come back, then I'm 100% like, yeah, we should have saved that for another expansion and put more into them. But and like Donald X has said that about some of the other mechanics. Like I think Nocturne in particular, he has said like he thinks that the spirits and like the boons and hexes should have been like in different expansions. And it was, I forget how night cards fit into that exactly. Maybe it was like spirits and night cards. Probably spirits and night cards. But yeah, like which you know, I mean, that I think it's like it speaks to a similar idea that like you want to give each of these individual mechanics a real chance to shine. And yeah, I think the theming to me is like secondary to that. So like you could come up with something else to call shadow cards if you needed to, in order to move them out to another expansion if that was what made sense. I think that which again makes me suspect, like, the fact that he has said that about Nocturne, it's not like he's not thinking about that, right? So that again makes me think like we're not just like done with shadow cards, because like there's no way you come up with a mechanic like that and then don't have more ideas for how you could use it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's definitely a learning process too, overall. I just wanted to affirm, I guess, like what you said about the dead cards, and that it's just, I know I said this before, like in the other previous videos, but I find it like very satisfying, and it's kind of like, it's comparable to like if you watch a TV show or you read a book series, and then like characters behave in a way that feels like super organic and just like very true to themselves in a way which is like so satisfying, because it just like it's a like the in universe makes sense kind of. And so like the cards that I have seen that include the dead, just it, like I see it and I feel like, yes, why hasn't this been like this? Just feels like so natural in a way, and that this feels like something, yes, this should have, like, not in a sense that it should have existed earlier, but like it just makes sense like in this game, and that is like super pleasing to me.
Right.
I like this
definitely
a lot.
Definitely. And I think the simplicity is part of that, right? It's like the more complicated something is, the more likely it is. And that doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with that, but the more likely it is to feel like, well, we had to, like, in order to come up with something new, we had to do this like crazy shenanigan stuff. But like here we have like some of these which are just like, oh yeah, this is like so straightforward. Like it's filling like a very natural like space. It doesn't feel like, sort of like bolted on or whatever. And not that I'm saying that other cards do, but like, I think that's like it's just it makes sense, and it's appealing. So I don't have like in general a strong sense of like, oh, there's too many trashers or not enough trashers, too many draw cards, not enough draw cards, too many villages. I don't know. Like I'm not tracking that, anything like that. So like we'll see about that, or maybe we won't. Like I don't know. Maybe I won't be able to tell. But but I'm definitely excited to play with the set. Like even despite what I said about the shadow cards, I think that's like a pretty minor complaint in context, because it's like I'm just saying like I want more of a thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong like with the cards that exist, and there's like a lot of fun stuff to check out. So I think this is like, to me, this set looks like a home run right now. We'll see how we feel about it in the future, but
really, really good. I just noticed, I think we don't have any reaction cards in the set.
And one duration.
Okay.
And no victory cards.
And no victory cards.
Everyone cries.
Interesting. Do they?
A lot of people have been saying that they want to see more victory cards. There was somebody linked a post from Donald X where he talked about like various possible victory card designs, and seemed to be coming to the conclusion. I mean, this was a post from years ago, but seemed to be coming to the conclusion that was like there was like limited space to explore there, and that like a lot of what was left would be like, here's a card that does a thing and then also happens to be worth like some number of victory points, which, isn't really probably what people are looking for when they say that. Like when you think of like victory cards, like you're thinking of marshland and territory, and you're not thinking of stronghold, basically. And like, which is fair. I mean, I don't know. I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about what victory cards I would design, but I mean, it is the case that if that is a limitation, then that sort of necessarily means that over time it's gonna be like less and less common to have those victory cards in a kingdom, because it's gonna be, those kingdom slots are going to be dominated by like all these other cards that are coming out and are not victory cards. So I think that's, one of the reasons that people want to see more of them is like, well, what's the rate at which you encounter these cards? And I mean, I don't know. I guess it doesn't feel to me as a player like alt VP is so rare that that's like a problem, right? Like there is like in addition to just like regular kingdom victory card piles, there's like VP tokens and there's colonies and there's like stuff where you gain like, you know, like alliance or enclave, landmarks where you can gain victory points and like either you can gain more of the victory points that are already there in a way that like, you know, makes it like kind of effectively alt VP, even if it's like enclave, like you gain a duchy anyway, like it's not adding more points total to the board, but it's making it more likely that you gain those points, or especially alliance. But yeah, like you said, landmarks. So it doesn't, to me, it doesn't feel like the game like lacks sufficient alt VP, but maybe it will in the future. I don't know. Or maybe it will after this set, because there's not like any alt VP in this set. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Anywho, that was just an observation.
Yeah, this set, there's also not very many treasures in this set, right? Like there's
rice.
Is it literally just rice? Oh, there's
two durations.
Two durations.
Samurai, you're like,
my apologies, everyone.
There's a good duration and there's an interesting duration.
Well, wait, which one is the good duration?
The riverboat. Well, it can be. That's
like,
okay. It's
swinging.
Okay. There's a potentially very good duration.
Yeah.
And then there's samurai.
Yeah. So, yeah, like not much kingdom treasure, which makes sense. I mean, we just have plunder, right? Like, so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Same as with the duration.
But it is a very.
We just have plunder. Yeah.
It is a very white set.
It's a very
despite being East Asian themed. Ha
ha ha ha
ha.
Yeah. Time to end. Unless you had another I guess like my ending thoughts are just very stoked. I'm gonna go right ahead and play with this now. It looks amazing and yeah. Very happy about it.
Yeah, and my ending thoughts are thanks for watching, and I will be back with more Dominion content in the near future, I'm sure.
Yeah, because this has not been enough.
No, of course
never.
Not. Never enough.
Never enough. Okay, the game has ended.
Bye.